Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that been Gino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today we're gonna get into the spooky zone. It's Spooktober, which means we had to pick a scary game because this is coming out around Halloween, and so we played Silent Hill 2, the second Silent Hill. The second Silent Hill we've covered for this show. We played Silent Hill 4: The Room a few years ago. I've picked both of the Silent Hills we've played. That one was a bummer. This one less so. And joining me to discuss this spooky game, as always, Pete Busby. Hello, Pete.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Silent Hill 2 is already the best Silent Hill game I've ever played, and probably ever will play, unless Gino picks, a third one for the podcast. But this week's fun fact, it's about ferrets.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this one it's probably not fun, but it's interesting.
It's not about how much they stink?
No, apparently they really, really do, though. Like, everything I've read about ferrets talks about how much they smell. Yeah. But, no, this one is about lady ferrets. So, female ferrets, when they go into heat, I'll just read it. Female ferrets go into heat in the first spring, and they will remain in season until successfully mating. If mating does not occur, the females will succumb to aplastic anemia and die a most painful death.
Jesus.
Now, yeah, I know. This site, I think, is definitely overstating things. I couldn't find out whether or not it's always fatal. But the point is that if female ferrets go into heat in mating season and they don't end up mating, they can die of anemia. It's basically the only species I've ever heard of that can die from lack of sex.
So
Except for humans, of course.
Of course.
they need the D, but on a medicinal level.
Yes, so the thing is, when they go into heat, their estrogen spikes. And again, I'm not a doctor, so take this with a grain of salt. But it signals their bone marrow to produce less red blood cells. And then they become anemic, and it can kill them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know people who have had ferrets. This makes me wonder, do you have to get your ferret spayed or neutered or else?
That is, so you can spay your ferrets, and that will take care of the problem. You can also mate them, obviously, or you can give your ferret hormone injections, and that will also take care of the problem.
All right, I'm going to just continue not having ferrets then. Thank you for that, Pete.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
That other voice you heard, was M. Palladino. Hello, M.
Hello. I was just looking this up to get a second opinion because I wasn't sure if that was true or not. The fact that they go into heat and stay that way indefinitely, they use the word indefinitely, is wild.
This ferret is horny forever now.
Forever. Until dealt with, forever.
Until boned, this ferret will be upset.
The one that got me too, again, I only saw this in one place, but supposedly you can cure this by mating a female ferret with a male ferret who has had a vasectomy. So the female ferret won't get pregnant, but it tricks her into thinking she will. So it still works. I don't know. I found that very confusing.
Desire is a strange thing. Why do we assume that it's just the pregnancy? Maybe the ferret's just horny and it will be anemic until it is resolved.
Good point.
Yeah, there's that. I've learned way too much about ferrets in this last 5 minutes.
You're welcome.
Anyway, we played Silent Hill. There's also a horny character in there who gets no satisfaction. And there's the segue.
That's great segue.
Thank you.
Real pro out here. Before we get into Silent Hill, and after we've talked about ferrets, as every podcast, I have to do the plug. You can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens, which will get you access to our Discord. It'll get you access to some community functions, forms and functions that we have. And one such thing that seems to be coming up, are we going to do the Silent Hill watch party?
Yeah, I want to do that. I checked my Amazon Prime and I canceled it. So if someone else has it, they can do a watch party of the Silent Hill movie. Because
which one? Silent Hill or Silent Hill?
The first one.
Okay.
Apparently the second one is very bad.
Well, the first one's not great either. But
yeah, but you know,
it has its fun.
It's okay. Yeah, it's fun. And then the second one is just like the cult stuff, which, yeah, it's fine, I guess.
Also with way less budget.
Yeah. Which is weird. You would think they would get more budget after the success of the first one. But
yeah, wow, that laid a lot of money.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know. But in the Discord, we will have more information about our Silent Hill, the movie, watch party. We may or may not record a podcast after it, but we'll see how we feel. The Jacob's Ladder into Silent Hill 2, into Silent Hill the movie. Didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
but
that's the pipeline.
Yeah, that's the pipeline, totally. As the Lord intended. The Dark Lord of Silent Hill. And so, yeah, get in there, support it on Patreon, get into the Discord, watch this cool, 10-plus-year-old movie?
Yeah, it's
2006.
Yep.
Like 16 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I had my PS3, my original PS3, it had two movies on it. American Beauty and Silent Hill the movie. These were the two movies I owned.
Yeah, well-known synergy there.
Mm-hmm.
Both starring problematic faiths.
Yes. Oh.
All right. Well, both starring dads who we wish would die. Sean Bean in that movie, and also, oh boy, American Beauty's got a lot of stuff going on. I bet if I went and rewatched that, it would be a bummer.
Didn't it win
Yes.
Best Picture that
It
year?
did.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Spacey making a lot of things that I enjoyed at a younger age just really terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Kaiser Soze. That was a good movie. Not the title, but I forget what it's called now. Usual Suspects. Yeah.
All right. Well, it is time. Speaking of the Discord, it's time to bop over to the Discord report.
Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. The Discord report. This week on the Discord, there's been people watching Dune, and what else did we get into? There's a whole bunch of stuff in the TV and movies channel.
A lot of folks playing Inscription.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask how that was going with you.
Good.
But
I think I'm near the end now, hopefully.
Yep.
It's not really a roguelike necessarily. It's kind of a roguelike deck builder, but there's weird stuff going on because it's from the makers of Pony Island.
I've never played Pony Island, but I've
heard
heard that I should.
Pony Island?
I did say Pony Island.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a game that starts out normal-ish and then gets dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like Doki Doki Literature Club dark?
Different, weirder, but similar in the is this game haunted sort of way.
Yeah. I was thinking of playing that tomorrow for Halloween on stream, but we'll see.
It's good for that, especially the first section.
Mm-hmm. Other things in the Discord. Did you know that you can spend just $150 a year to eat all of your meals at Six Flags?
I did know that, and it sounds horrible.
Yeah, it sounds like you would get very large very quickly. But apparently, friend of the show, ZP, Chris Zombie Pie Redacted, has a meal plan at a theme park that he uses at least 1 to 2 meals a week. And that's not blowing up his spot because he's already said it on stream. So you could do it too. Find the nearest Six Flags.
Find the nearest Six Flags until they close the loophole.
Yeah. Also, Gino was watching Hunter x Hunter.
I was, and now I've
You're not.
stopped.
You didn't finish the Chimera arc, or did you?
I got to the Chimera arc. I'm probably 2/3 of the way through, and I'm just done. I'm sick of it. It's so much. There are so many characters who get introduced and given names, and they have 10, 20-minute segments of bantering back and forth, and the whole time I'm like, all of you fuckers are gonna die. None of you matter.
And then they do.
Yeah, they do.
Here's Cheetox. He's got this power, and he's got this ability. Cheetox is not gonna matter.
He might survive.
No, he gets stepped on.
Does he? He never matters. I can remember if he died or not. You know what I was thinking about yesterday, or maybe the day before? So like not a long time ago, but a while ago, somebody released like a cut of Dragon Ball Z where they just like cut out all the bullshit, pretty much, like all the people charging up and things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I would pay like a large amount of money, a borderline irresponsible amount of money, for a cut of One Piece that did that. Mm-hmm. There are only like 200 episodes now. Like nobody's wandering around looking for each other. Just get rid of all that nonsense.
The version of what Star Wars was it? Attack of the Clones that is 40 minutes long instead of 2-ish hours. That cut out all the bullshit, which is on my list of how to watch the Star Wars movies. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So you're telling me in this version it's exclusively scenes in the Galactic Senate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, basically.
I would watch that. I would watch Intergalactic C-SPAN.
I think it's called the no cheese cut because half of the stuff that they cut out was like all the cheesy lines and Jar Jar Binks doing things because he was still in that movie.
Him existing in the movie.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Just needs an editor.
Hunter x Hunter, the first season and the second season were both great. Yeah, like third season too. Like The Exam, York New City, which is great as a name for a place, and then the weird MMO thing that they did. That was all good. And then the Chimera arc, boy, they introduce a lot of throwaway characters. They give them a lot of dialogue. The villain just doesn't want to do anything but play fake chess against a blind girl because he's a monster. He's exactly Cell, but like nihilistic.
With like the exact same tail and color scheme too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing that they allowed that.
Can I ask a quick semantic question?
Sure.
You don't pronounce the X in the title? I've always said Hunter x Hunter.
I've said both. Hunter x Hunter and Hunter.
I think when they do like the little transition for commercials, they just say Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
Yeah, I really at some point during I think the third season, I said, "Are they ever going to hunt anything on this show?"
And the answer was no.
The answer was yes, and that's the Chimera Ant arc, and they're like, "Oh, so you want to see them hunt something, huh?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like when your dad catches you and makes you smoke the whole pack of cigarettes.
Exactly. You want to see them hunt something? 60 episodes.
Never ask me for anything again.
It's the Lucky Charms. Oops, all marshmallows.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's too much. Well, yeah, that is what has been going on in the Discord, and so now it is time once again for my obsession of the week. And this week, my obsession is a oldie but a goodie. I am re-obsessed. I rewatched Haunting of Bly Manor. That show's still really good.
Is that the first or the second?
That's the second.
Second one's good. I watched that one.
Did you watch the first one?
No, I only watched the second.
Really? You should watch the first.
Well, you said the second one was really good. That's the reason I watched it.
They're both really good. The they're just different thematically. The second one's a love story. The first one's a family drama, but fucked up and haunted. But yeah, Bly Manor, check it out if you are in the mood for spooky stuff. I think I might have shouted it out last year, but I have rewatched it again, and it holds up. It holds up to rewatches, which is nice. Though I do a lot more fast forwarding because Mike Flanagan, he really loves his long monologues, and I don't need to see them a second time, you know? When people are just like, you know, what's the nature of life even? You know, sometimes you just fast forward through that to the plot beats.
But what does it mean to be in a haunted house?
They do a lot of like possession sort of stuff. Like this ghost is possessing people, but he was also really possessive in life of his relationships.
Aha. See what they did there.
Yep. Metaphors. Speaking of metaphors that are kind of on the nose, Silent Hill 2 is the game we played this week, and I picked it, but I never do the descriptions. So, Pete, why don't you explain to us what Silent Hill 2 is all about?
Sure. Silent Hill 2, it asks a lot of deep questions. The most important one is, how the hell did Eddie get that pizza in the middle of Silent Hill? The town is haunted and full of ghosts. Who would deliver such a pizza? But we'll get to that. Silent Hill is about this man, James. We call it Returns to Silent Hill. He was with his wife, who, as he describes, died 3 years ago, but somehow he got a letter from her saying, come back to our special place, the titular Silent Hill. So James returns there, tries to find his deceased wife, and as things tend to happen in Silent Hill, ghosts, calamities, curses all ensue as he looks around this haunted, incredibly foggy town for his dead wife.
Yes. So this game follows James Sunderland or Sutherland?
I think Sunder.
I think it's Sunderland. James Sunderland as he investigates Silent Hill. This is one of the more unique Silent Hills in a number of different ways. For one thing, there are characters other than the main character, like humans, and not just like ghostly children. James encounters other people on his journey through Silent Hill. Very early on, you meet Angela Oresco, I think is her name. And then there's Eddie, who you mentioned, Pete. And then there's a little girl named Laura. So there are actually characters to interact with in this game other than the town, which is a pretty big departure. Silent Hill 4 has some folks to interact with, and I think 3 does too. 1, you're pretty much in an abandoned town. And then some of the later games, I think there are even fewer NPCs in those. So, Pete, you've played Silent Hill 4 for the podcast. Em, did you play the Silent Hill game before this?
I've not played a Silent Hill before this.
Okay.
I'm trying to eat my chicken while you were talking.
I'm sorry.
Damn it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I should have known. I was trying to wait, but it was staring at me.
That's fine. That's fine. Look, we all got to eat eventually. So, Pete, how was this impression? I mean, you played 4, which is maybe the least representative Silent Hill game we could have played before this, but how did you feel about this as compared to your previous Silent Hill experiences?
Worse than the first half of 4, but better than the second half. Like, worse once you leave the room. But honestly, so I watched the Silent Hill movie, the first one, way back in the day, so I was sort of expecting a lot of these plot beats. But I guess the one thing I wasn't really anticipating was just how oppressive the fog is. And I don't mean like atmospherically oppressive, like it lends itself to jump scares, but I mean it just makes it difficult to play in a way that just feels mean-spirited.
How which version did you play? The PS2, the Xbox?
Yeah, I guess the original PS2 one.
Okay. Because the PS2 version and the Xbox version, those both have very oppressive fog. There was actually a remaster that was released for the PS3 and maybe the 360 that, weirdly enough, they made the draw distance farther so you can see through the fog more. But as a trade-off, as a devastating side effect of this change, there are a bunch of locations that you are not supposed to see because of how dense the fog is. And once they lightened the fog, you can now see like the seams of the town in a way that you can't.
So it's better but worse.
Yes, they designed it very much with the specific draw distance they had in mind. Like, Toluca Lake, it's implied that there's water, and you can never see it because the fog's so thick. But if you play the HD remaster, you can see, there's no water there.
I mean, it's sort of fitting for Silent Hill. Is the camera still as wonky? Because one of the most annoying things to me too is when you walk through a doorway and the camera's just straight on your face as opposed to whatever might be in this room you've just entered.
Yeah.
The camera is very strange at all times, in all iterations.
The camera placement is the same for when there are static cameras. I don't know if they use a traditional dual stick camera scheme when you're moving around the town and you have camera control. But yeah, definitely in the Xbox. I played the Xbox version on a 360 with backwards compatibility. So for me, the camera was just, it was workable, but it wasn't good. Same thing with the controls. Did everyone immediately turn off tank controls?
Yes, immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how immediately, but very quickly.
As soon as I realized I had the option to turn it off, I was like, oh, thank God. Because I've played Silent Hill 1 partially with the tank controls, and it's truly a miserable experience. It was before, games figured out how to do cameras.
Yeah, it was literally, while I was in the bathroom, I moved the stick once, and was like, what the fuck is this? And I immediately changed it.
Yeah, I get the idea, and the idea behind tank controls is that your character's orientation is the same regardless of what camera angle they cut to. So forward stays forward even if they move the camera perspective, whereas normal 3D controls are relative to where the camera's positioned. So you can end up, if they do a hard cut, what might have been forward before might be sideways, and so you can end up disoriented when the camera cuts. But I'd rather be disoriented the 5% of the time that the camera cuts abruptly, rather than be dealing with bullshit 99% of the time when I'm trying to move. But oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing, just from a gameplay perspective, I noticed, and I don't know if I just forgot this from the one we played, Gino, but there seemed to be a lot more puzzles than I remember in the sort of old school point and click adventure use of the term.
Yeah.
I think that 4 has similar puzzles in the back half, not as much in the front half. But there's definitely a lot more in this game of find 3 weird objects and then put them in order.
Find a wax doll, a lighter, and a horseshoe to make a handle for this door.
Favorite puzzle.
It's crazy.
You didn't like that puzzle? You didn't like chicken with a pulley in the middle?
This is so spooky.
Mm-hmm. I at that point I had some trouble actually playing this one because there were issues that I ran into. So I was watching at that point, and I watched the person do this wax doll puzzle, and I was like, I would have never gotten that. I'm glad I gave up before this happened, because goddamn.
Well, you were there when you joined me. I streamed my whole playthrough of this game, and you were, I think, on the line for that one.
You looked at a guide. I saw you do it.
I didn't look at a guide for that puzzle because I just knew that. Look, he said there's no handle on this door, and I was like, well, a horseshoe's kind of a handle. And then I tried to use the horseshoe, and it was like, I can't just shove a horseshoe on this. That won't work. That's for idiots.
What am I, a dumbass?
Yeah.
You know what makes an excellent adhesive, though? Wax.
Wax. Melt some wax and put it in there.
He melts some wax, and then he waits 10 minutes, and then opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, too, while we're just talking about minor things that annoyed me, This game also has the longest staircase outside of Mario 64 I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I was walking down it and I legitimately thought, like, oh, this must be some, like, crazy Silent Hill thing. I can't go down the stairs until I do this other thing. But no, it's just long
Just very long.
Longest staircase in the world.
Yeah, and we'll have to discuss kind of what is going on in the back half of this game, because I think the sections that you're talking about are very much environment as metaphor and environment as storytelling vehicle, much more than practical environment. You're like the beginning of the game, you're on the outskirts of Silent Hill, you're in like a rest stop, then you're walking by a lake, you get to the main part of town, it's very foggy. But towards the back half of the game, the environment becomes more improbable, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the reading that I did after I watched The Shining a couple of weeks ago, because in that book, they're in that movie, in the Kubrick version of The Shining,
which Stephen King hated.
Which Stephen King hated. There are a lot of sets that, especially a few rooms that make no sense when compared against the facade of the building that they're supposed to be in. Like, there's this gold room that is huge, very tall ceilings, very wide ballroom that just there's no way it could fit in the hotel that they are showing. And some folks like came up to Kubrick and were like, "Hey, Stanley, this set doesn't make any sense in the building. You know, that's a plot hole." He's like, "No, you buffoons. It's supposed to be an impossible geometry because this place is fucked up and haunted.
You just don't understand my vision."
Far be it from me to question Kubrick, who's clearly a genius beyond anything I could ever hope for. But that does remind me of that episode of The Simpsons where they go to like an Itchy and Scratchy convention, and some guy's like, "I noticed when Itchy is playing, or when Scratchy, which one's which?"
Itchy is, I think, the mouse, and Scratchy's the cat.
They were like, when Itchy's playing a xylophone made of Scratchy's ribs, he hits the same bone and it makes two different noises. Can you explain that? And the person just goes, "Yeah, anytime you see that, a wizard did it."
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. But I think that a similar thing is going on to Kubrick's explanation. Like, there are scenes in this game where stuff stops making sense from a practical, hey, how does this town function sort of perspective. It makes a lot of sense in terms of where James is at emotionally. And so, like, the very beginning of the game, we get into Silent Hill. You're unarmed for about 5-10 minutes, and I found that to be the most terrifying part of the whole game. Just about. The few moments when you don't have a weapon are the most effective, I think, gameplay moments. And Silent Hill has actually done this again, and I think it's Shattered Memories for the Wii. They had no combat in that game too. Because oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other thing that adds to it is when you pick up the radio too.
Yeah.
Because that acts as basically your enemy radar. It doesn't say where they are or anything though. Just the static on the radio picks up whenever an enemy's nearby. So it's both helpful and, obviously ominous.
Yeah, super off-putting. And when you walk through the outskirts of Silent Hill, you constantly hear rustling in the bushes. You can hear monsters kind of doing stuff just off camera. And because of the incredibly dense fog, it becomes very claustrophobic despite the fact that you're outside. And a lot of this game's power is in its audio design. And how much it coupled with the visuals, with the dense fog or the darkness, just allow your mind to fill in the gaps where the game can't. Like, you do most of the scare. You scare yourself more than this game will scare you, I find.
Yeah, this was one of the first moments where I was like, "Oh, something's wrong with my copy," because I did not hear any of that. I had a very nice time walking into Silent Hill because the audio track was messed up on mine. So all of those creepy noises I did not hear. And then I watched you play it. I watched a Let's Play that ZP recommended. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, this part is so scary." I was like, I didn't run into any of that.
Yeah, and if you don't have any audio,
Yeah.
this whole section is completely ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
Which, shout-outs to Akira Yamaoka, the sound design. I know he's the composer. I think he also did some sound design on Silent Hill. But it pulls a ton of weight in this game. So once we get kind of to the first Silent Hill-y location, you get to the cemetery on the outskirts of Silent Hill, we run into our first NPC, Angela. How would we describe James and Angela talking to each other like two human beings?
That is not how I would describe it. There is some weird stuff going on with the voice acting in this game. Yeah. Do you wanna touch on why that is, Gino?
Sure. So I learned this during my playthrough. Or Pete, do you know why?
No, it's very awkward though.
So apparently this game, it was made in 2000. It was published in 2001. So when it was in development, 1999 and 2000, the developers, it was developed in Japan by Konami, and they just put out a call for people who spoke English.
That was the primary qualification?
Yes, in Japan.
They were not looking for voice actors, which shows. The person who plays Angela was a Australian woman who was suppressing her accent the entire time she was talking. And as far as I know, the guy who voices James is just some guy.
Yeah,
who just happened to be in Japan at the time.
None of them really got credits on other things. It's very clear that they were given very, very light direction. They were not voice actors, and they just kept it. They're like, perfect. That line reads excellent.
No notes. Run with it.
Nailed it.
There's something wrong with this town.
That line is so... You just have to, if you haven't played the game, you just have to watch that one cutscene and just extrapolate throughout the entire game. Because it doesn't get any better than that. And it also has the worst of the voice lines.
Yeah. Angela being like, so, like, James walks over, it's like, "Hey, lady, is Silent Hill near here?" And she's like, "Yeah, but you shouldn't go there. Something's wrong with that town." And James is like, "I'm just going to go anyway." She's like, "I don't think you should." But then neither one of them says, "Hey, what if we stuck together?" And if you try to talk to Angela after she gives you directions to Silent Hill, she'll go, "Weren't you looking for someone?" And then James says, "Yeah, that's right." And then he leaves. He just walks away. It's incredible. They do a really good job of making sure you understand that James is an idiot pretty early on. Just no introspection in this man. He'll talk to people, but he's got nothing going on between the ears. Like, every time you examine an object, it's just, that doesn't look like it's meaningful. I don't think I need that. Nothing going on here.
The funniest times are when you find corpses, and he's like, "Well, that's a dead body." The first time when you encounter a monster and there's a body, he's like, "Oh God, oh no, what happened?" And then every time after that, he's just like, "Yep, there it is.
Dead people."
Yep.
My favorite is when we haven't met Maria yet, but she's coming up soon. But there's a point where she gets very tired, and James is just like, "Why don't you go to sleep in this room, in this abandoned hospital, surrounded by monsters?" And she just throws back some pills and goes to sleep. James just like, "Cool, looks like she's got it under control," and leaves.
Yeah, you hang out here.
Yeah,
She's
he
all
just
set.
goes.
Nailed it.
He comes back, he finds 3 empty pill bottles. 3. And he's like, "Oh, is this Maria's medicine?"
She finished all of it. Huh.
I guess she's
Weird.
really well.
Yeah, she got better. Oh, boy. James.
Yeah, so I just really enjoyed examining things with James because they found so many ways to say nothing interesting. Just so many different varieties. And then the handful of times where he actually bothers to read something, it's always like, here's a pop magazine, and then you read, and then the paragraph's like, Walter Sullivan murdered 2 children.
Yeah.
I wouldn't describe that as a pop magazine, James.
No.
Probably not. My favorites are the ones where he's like, he finds a document and then he goes, this has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so why read it?
So we're just not going to look at it. But why did we read all those other news articles about murders and, like, just horrible things? Those also had nothing to do with you.
Also, James, why would anything have fucking anything to do with you? It's another town you don't live in.
You're not from this place.
You've never been to this hospital before?
There's a time, too, in the hospital where you go to a bookshelf. I forget exactly what he says, but he's like, I don't have time to read all these books. He just turns around and leaves.
James. Yeah, so investigating, they do a good job of making clear when something's useful, though, because James will have nothing to say about it unless you need to interact with it. So, once you get into Silent Hill proper, I mean, the introduction, like, you see a creature moving in the fog and a trail of blood leading to it. And James is very adamant that he will not explore the rest of the town until he gets to the bottom of this trail of blood, which is a bummer. I was like, I'll use this opportunity to pick up all the items in town before they turn on combat. And it's like, nah, you need to follow the shambling corpse monster.
They saw you coming.
Yeah, and the shambling corpse monster, which I believe is called the patient demon.
Yes,
how would you describe what that thing looks like, Em?
So it looks like if you put a person in a straitjacket, except that straitjacket was made of their own flesh. It's kind of like got a featureless head, and it's kind of, instead of having arms, it's kind of got flaps of meat where arms should be, and it just kind of wriggles around at you. And also it spits acid at you in order to deal harm.
And it spits the acid out of a vertical slit going down the middle of its body.
Some of you might be saying, this sounds kind of sexual. Yes.
Yes.
Strapped in. It's going to sound
Correct.
sexual a lot.
This is the least sexual of the monsters.
This might come as a surprise, but something about Silent Hill is very horny.
Yeah, and it also, like, the monster weirdly has platform pumps on.
Yeah, I was going to mention this, actually. I found out that the original designs for this monster, it actually was, like, a person with a bag over their head and, like, up to the thigh red leather boots. With, yeah, which I think they felt was too on the nose. So
it's a choice.
Yeah.
Instead they chose like a flesh straitjacket, weird like pumps, and then just a great ass. A very defined ass on these patient demons.
Which you will see a lot of, particularly in this first cutscene, which seems to center a shot on it.
Yeah. Yeah, so James, I think pretty early on, you get the sense that some of what's happening to James is reflective of his emotional state. And the demons and the monsters that he sees clearly also reflect that. That something about Silent Hill is reacting to him in some way. So at first, like, the streets are full of just these patient demons. You kind of have to find your way to the first locale, which is a set of apartment buildings. Once you make your way into the apartment buildings, you meet Eddie, which is the other human one of the other humans, and you also meet Laura. Pete, why don't you talk a little bit about Eddie? What's going on with him?
So we find out a lot about Eddie. His preoccupation for the most part is with his weight and his perceived disrespect from people all around him. He basically thinks everybody's making fun of him. In his defense, Laura definitely is in their brief moments together. But like I said, he ends up eating this magic pizza at one point. But you meet him, he's in a room with a dead body, and he's, throwing up in the toilet, just from being disgusted by this horrible dead body. He's trying to convince you that he didn't do it. And then, like everyone else you meet in Silent Hill, he just wanders off. He just walks through the door and he just, bye, Eddie. See you again later, I guess.
Yeah, James leaves him head in the toilet and is like,
Yeah.
well, I got to keep investigating.
Yeah.
And-
I'll see you around, Eddie.
No teamwork.
Nope.
But he's very much like in the movie version. If this were a comedy, he'd probably be played by Chris Farley, at least for the first half. He's sort of like a schlubby screw up, let's say, in the sitcom mold.
Man, if they've had a cinematic version of Silent Hill 2 and he was played by Jack Black,
Also a pretty good get.
it would be a hell of a
Good
casting
play.
because
That would be.
you know what the type that he's playing in the first half would not be the type he's playing in the second half.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Eddie's hang up is with his weight, and when James first gets there and finds Eddie with a body, he says, so Eddie, did you kill this guy? And he's like, I totally didn't. I just got in here and he was dead. And then there seems to be a running theme with Eddie of finding him near bodies that he claims he very much didn't kill.
Which, ordinarily would be very suspicious, but in Silent Hill, it's sort of like, all right, yeah, there might have just been a dead body in here.
And Angela is looking for her mama, she says. Pete, how old do you think Angela's supposed to be?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just based on the voice acting and the character model, early 30s?
19.
19. Wow. Okay. They did not telegraph that.
Yeah, once M told me that she was supposed to be 19, I was like, what do you mean? This is a 45-year-old divorcee. What are you talking about?
Middle-aged woman. I was being generous. I was like, well, I'll give her a bump for the early graphics, but she's not 19.
Yeah, so her hang up, she seems to be looking for her mother, and she seems to have a problem in her family, at least from her first discussion with James. And she does not trust you. And then Laura, we meet, she's a little girl. She's an asshole. She steps on you try to reach for some keys. She steps on your hand. Sucks.
Later on, she tricks you into going into a monster room.
She locks you in a monster room.
Yep.
She's definitely a jerk. But in the grand scheme of Silent Hill, I couldn't really tell why she was there. I understood why the other three were.
Yeah.
We'll go over it.
Okay.
It's a good question. I don't know if the game answers it, but we've got ideas.
Yeah. So in the apartment, we meet now kind of all the characters we're going to see, or most of them. And we also meet kind of the main antagonist of Silent Hill 2, which is Pyramid Head. When you first encounter him, he's just kind of hanging out behind a grate, and you see him, but you can't get at him, and he can't get at you. Then you go into an apartment, just a room, and he is pantomiming rape of two mannequin enemies. And the mannequin enemies are two bottoms of mannequins just stacked on top of each other.
Yep,
so it's a
just
crotch on top of a crotch.
Yep.
Like we said, things are going to get pretty sexy.
Not here. But
yeah, Pyramid Head has two of these mannequin monsters stacked on top of each other and violently thrusting his crotch into them and then dragging them around because they're dead after he's done. And then James he hides in a closet and watches as this happens. because that's the kind of sicko James is.
This will also not be the only time you catch Pyramid Head in a compromising position.
That's true. So I think at this point, like, we've seen 3 different monster designs. The mannequins, which are, like I said, they're just 2 crotches stacked on each other. There's no hands or feet. It's just kind of legs and groinal area. Pyramid Head, again, his head is very phallic. It's shaped like it's kind of a big dick.
He's also
arms.
dragging a massive sword around the whole time. I mean, I'm not Freud, but, you know.
So what do we make, if Pete, you're not Freud, but you've read Freud, what do you make of kind of these monster designs that we're being shown here? Because it seems they are reflecting some things about James.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely James has some sexual hang-ups. And I mean, this isn't really spoiler territory, but you do find out that his wife was sick for a very long time. So, I mean, this could be sort of James's pent-up sort of, this is a bad way to put it. It seems sort of almost mild or understandable. His pent-up sexual frustration that's coming out in this sort of guilt-ridden, horrible, sort of masochistically violent structure. But they're all they're completely depersonalized as well. Like, there are no faces on any enemy we see the entire game.
Yes.
That I can recall. So it's very much an anonymous sort of orgy of flesh.
And Pyramid Head is kind of this hyper-masculine force that is enacting sexual violence onto the enemies around it.
Yes, he's literally invincible.
Yeah, he's invincible, and his weapon is either a giant sword or a spear. It's just all piercing stuff. So I mean, it's pretty overt. Like, I think your read is right. Like, a lot of these monsters are supposed to represent the sexual frustration that is pent up in James after, spending, I don't know how much time. We don't really know how long Mary's been sick and how long James has been kind of staying away from her. But it seems to be playing out in the monster designs and what is haunting him specifically. So getting through the apartments, there's not too much going. Do we find Angela in the apartments with the knife? That's where we take the knife from
Yes.
Angela, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you find Angela with a cleaver, not a cleaver,
It's like a chef's knife, just like a
chef's
kitchen knife. Yeah.
steak knife. Just holding it in a very troubling way. And James asks to take the knife from her so that she doesn't hurt herself with it. She says, "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do with it if I had it." But Angela also doesn't trust you at all. You seem to be doing her a solid, but she's clearly got some hang-ups beyond that. And we also we don't see her fight. We don't rescue her yet, right?
No.
That's in
the hospital.
Yeah, that's a ways.
It's in the underground, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit yet.
A little bit away. Okay, so you get through the apartments. You've met most of the central characters. Next stop is a park. So it's kind of the park in Silent Hill that I guess is James and his wife's special place. When he goes there to try and find Mary, he does not find Mary, but he finds a woman who could be her sister named Maria, which, if you don't know, Maria is just Mary in Spanish or Italian.
Yeah, it's very subtle. But she's basically Mary all sexed up. Maria is on the prowl. She's ready to mingle, despite Silent Hill, except for Pyramid Head, being the least sexy place in the entire world.
Yeah. She's got like dyed ends on her hair. She's got very like her blouse is pretty buttoned down. She's got a mini skirt soon after you meet her, you have to go to a bowling alley, and behind the bowling alley is a strip club, and she has the keys to the strip club. There are 3 different keys. Like, one she keeps in a pocket, one she keeps in her bra, and one she keeps in, like, her boot or something. Why she has the keys to the strip club, who's to say? But she is very clearly, like, a version of James's wife, just incredibly hypersexualized, and she wants to spend all of her time with James.
Yeah, when you walk up to her and you say, basically, I'm looking for my wife, and she's like, oh, okay. And then you're like, yeah, our special place was this hotel in town. And she's like, I bet it was, James. Like, it's a lot of innuendo from her for a life-threatening situation.
Yeah, she is one of the only other characters who seems to see the monsters when you're around. Like, she reacts to the monsters. Eddie and Angela, the monsters are never around. They say that there's stuff, but they never say what they're seeing. But Maria at least is like, yeah, there are monsters everywhere. So she at least should have a reason to be like, this is inappropriate timing for me.
Back to the bowling alley, too. Like you said, Gino, the next place we go is that bowling alley. And here's where Eddie is eating that damn pizza.
Yeah.
Where in the world and this isn't like a DiGiorno. Eddie didn't cook it himself. It is in a takeout box. Who delivered this pizza?
And I was thinking maybe it's one of those bowling alleys that has a kitchen. But I didn't find a kitchen.
No.
It doesn't seem to have been in the bowling alley.
I couldn't get past it. The only explanation is it is some sort of psychic pizza. Some sort of projection of Eddie's. Like, James makes Pyramid Head. Eddie made a takeout pizza.
Yeah, he made a pizza and a bunch of corpses.
Not using the same methods for each.
Probably not. So here in the bowling alley, like, we see Eddie, we see Laura, this little girl. They're interacting. Laura's making fun of Eddie for his weight. Eddie's eating a pizza and kind of dealing with it. Then you have to go to a strip club to eventually cut through there to end up at the hospital. The hospital, like you said, Pete, this is where James and Maria get split up because she has to take her sleepy time pills because it's been too much running around being chased by monsters. The hospital is really just a creepy location.
It is.
Yeah.
Creepy. She's invulnerable, though, right? Like, I heard her get hit, but she doesn't ever seem to take damage.
No, she's vulnerable. If she dies, it's a game over.
All right. Well, good thing I didn't let her die.
Not only is she vulnerable, but as ArbitraryWater found out, you can also hurt her. I think that he missed the save at the start of the hospital and then lost like half an hour of progress because he accidentally shot Maria. And that results in a game over if you do it.
Sucks.
Mm-hmm. So, double vulnerable.
Yeah, it's definitely an odd situation. Like, you don't need to. Thankfully, she stays out of the way. She's one of the better, like, what would you even call it? One of the better sequences where you're protecting someone.
Follow or
escort mission things.
Yeah.
You don't have to escort her very much. The monsters are not that threatening, and she stays close to you, so it's not that bad, all things considered. So the kind of hospital, it feels mostly like just good ambiance. Though this is the first place where we see the kind of nightmare Silent Hill show up. So Silent Hill seems to have multiple realities kind of stacked on top of each other. There's I assume there's a normal Silent Hill where there are people. There's the foggy Silent Hill that you first arrive in. And then there's the nightmare dark Silent Hill, where everything gets all rusty, it's all chain link fences everywhere, and it's pitch black all the time. This hospital, the hospital marks the first time where you cut over to the Nightmare Silent Hill, and it's in a section where you have to fight Pyramid Head. You fight him for a while. It's really just a survival mission. You can't damage him really. But after a while, a siren goes off, and then he wanders off. And from that point on, you're in Dark Silent Hill. What did y'all think of this kind of juxtaposition between the fog and the dark?
the game gets a lot more interesting to me the further, let's say, indoors you go. So like the smaller areas you're operating in, the better. Especially because, I mean, Gino, like you said just a moment ago, the enemies aren't really that threatening. You can mostly just sort of like run around them for the most part. So I mean, if you didn't have this claustrophobia, this limited vision, combat wouldn't really be much. Not that that's the point of a Silent Hill game anyway, but.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of the game, I had killed 97 enemies in melee combat, and I think I barely got hurt most of the game. If you choose to engage something, the only thing that can really get you hurt is if there are multiple enemies and one of them's off camera, and so you can't tell where it is, or being just like completely surprised. But in any encounter where I knew where the enemy was, I was never in jeopardy.
Yeah, the Silent Hill game's not exactly known for their combat. Most of, like, even the boss fights are just stand in a place, shoot your gun, and then once the boss gets to you, go to the other side of the arena, and then do the same thing until they stop coming at you.
Yeah, it's definitely a case where, like, the vibes of being in these claustrophobic spaces are much more impactful than the actual combat or the threats to your life. I definitely went long stretches without taking damage. And the best way to play this game really is avoiding most enemies. There's no reward for killing them. It's just using up your ammo or your health items. So the hospital, I think it's like this is the most evocative of Jacob's Ladder. We've got the nurse demons. We eventually get some gratings and some fences in interior spaces that shouldn't be there. Wiggly demons all over the place. And I mean, this game, even the cover of this game looks a lot like the poster for Jacob's Ladder. So I think that this is where you can see the inspiration kind of most clearly, this foggy abandoned place that James is investigating.
It makes the most sense thematically too. I mean, when you remember that is the whole impetus for this story is that he was dealing with his wife's prolonged illness. Like naturally a hospital would take up a lot of his focus.
Yeah. And, leaving Maria, his other wife, alone in this hospital for long periods of time, I think also kind of mirrors how he left his wife Mary and just kind of went on living his life while she was in jeopardy. Kind of the big story beat in here is that eventually, after you've gotten separated from Maria, you come back to her in the dark hospital, and Pyramid Head chases her down and impales her with his sword, and she is ostensibly dead, and you just kind of carry on after she's gotten killed. And Lara tells you at some point that she knows Mary, your wife, and there was another letter that Mary wrote that she wants you to find. So this kind of guides us to the next section, which is the Silent Hill Historical Society. You have to first go find a wrench, and then you have to dig up a box which has the key to the Historical Society in it. And then you have to run all the way across town to the Historical Society, which has a big old picture of Pyramid Head and demons in it.
Just some local history.
I actually found out while I was watching one of the Let's Plays that I watched that was like the traditional butcher outfit of the town. Or, yeah, it's called the Butcher's Wardrobe.
Like with the helmet?
Including the helmet.
What?
I thought it was an executioner's outfit.
Yeah, let's see. It says that it was similar to the executioners of the town's cult, with a red rusted pyramid-shaped helmet over his head, donning butcher's wardrobe, leather boots, and white executioner's gloves. So it's because it's a cult thing.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an executioner.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But the having it just kind of hanging in the Historical Society, I think this is where the game most drastically, like once it goes dark Silent Hill, it becomes clear that there's more going on here than this location being haunted. Like there are multiple levels. The space is like the geometry of the space becomes less realistic. Like there are monsters in the like Silent Hill in the town that are walking on grates that are beneath you. Like all of a sudden you're walking on kind of fence material. And then there are monsters defying gravity underneath you, kind of attacking you through their feet. So like it stops even making sense geometrically. And once you get into the historical society, there's like holes in the wall that lead to, like you said, Pete, the longest staircase maybe in games.
Oh God, so long.
You just descend for like a minute, and then at the bottom of that there's like a hole. You jump through that hole, it puts you at like the bottom of a well. You break through a hole in the well, and there's just a door in the well behind a wall. You get to another section, you jump down again, and then you're in a prison. And
there are like 6 pits too. Like you jump a lot.
Yes. You keep descending, and I think at this point the game is just, it is showing that you are descending down, down, down into hell, into your own mind, into your own psyche. The metaphor is that there's a descent going on, and
it's very Dante-esque. Like the most horrible criminals, the worst things you're going to see are at the bottom layer of hell, and you just keep going deeper and deeper as a means to climb back up, which Dante and James both do.
Yeah, and also kind of improbably, Eddie and Angela are both down here too. So they somehow, despite the fact that this place was locked, there's only one way in, both of them are down there when you get down there. So it's clear that Silent Hill, like the town, and Angela and Eddie both kind of remark on this, that like this town had called them there. There was something that brought them to this town. And so it's clear that whatever force has guided you to this prison and to these specific locations, it's also guiding Eddie and Angela. And now we kind of get some crescendos on each of their plot lines. Angela has a section where you find her alone in a room with a door monster. They call them the doorman. It's literally like a creature in a door horizontally. Like there's this weird flesh monster embedded in a door. But she says it's her papa. So it kind of calls into question. I think it calls some things into question. Em, what did you make of that?
As far as the symbolism of the thing in the door?
The thing in the door, and also why Angela says it's my dad.
Well, we know I don't know if we learn this before or after we have this fight, but it's right around this part. We learn that Angela has been abused by her father, and as soon as you like finish this combat, she like picks up a TV that is in this room, and then hits the monster with it, which seems to be implying that this is how she killed her father, who was a monster. Is there more interpretation to be done there?
Well, the interpretation Pete, go ahead first.
Well, I was just gonna say she also like talks about her mother, and her mother's whole like justification for it was that Angela deserved it for some horrible twisted reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just assumed, based on later information that we get on Angela, that she burned the house down with her parents in it.
I think that's a fair assumption too. Yeah. And I think so when she's saying like that's my dad, I took that to mean that she is literally seeing a different Silent Hill than James is. Like there are monsters, but the monsters are not the same monsters.
That would fit with the flames later on too, because she says this is how it always looks for me.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to reference as well. It seems like she is always seeing fire, and
she's always seeing fire, and she's
stuff.
Always seeing her dad.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas James sees flesh and sees sexy things. And Eddie seems to be seeing people making fun of him. And we come across Eddie in this underground prison as well. And he's just surrounded by bodies. He seems to have shot and killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, he killed a dog too. It basically sounds like he fed it glass.
Mm-hmm.
But Eddie, the part I don't understand about Eddie, right? So James is here because presumably he feels guilty for something, which we'll go to. Angela is here because presumably she feels guilty for killing her parents, even though she shouldn't. I don't know. Like, Eddie doesn't seem remorseful. Like, Eddie's killed and he's ready to kill again. Like, maybe Silent Hill doesn't activate exclusively on guilt, but that seemed to be the premise thus far.
It seems like it is punishing people who might not have been might not have felt guilty when they should have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That might make sense.
Yeah, as far as Eddie goes, he's kind of a weird character, because it's implied that he did kill the dog that he talks about, but the creator, let me find the actual quote. The creator said something to the effect of, Eddie hasn't killed anybody. Eddie Dombrowski. The trivia for Eddie says that, according to Masahiro Ito, Eddie only killed a dog. The bodies that appear in his scenes are just illusions.
Yeah.
And this is, his Twitter. So
Eddie says that. He says that he killed a dog, he shot a dog, and then, enjoyed watching it try to, put its guts back in.
Oh, that's it. Because he said it was chewing at his stomach.
Yeah. So he shot a dog.
Okay.
And then the owner of the dog came out and he shot the owner in the leg but didn't kill him. And then he ran away and Silent Hill called him. And then from there, all the other bodies that are around Eddie seem to be people similar to James killing monsters, Eddie's killing people making fun of him.
Mm-hmm.
So James, for some reason, seems to be able to kind of dip into the nightmare worlds of the people around him. Like, he sees the bodies that Eddie's making. He sees the fire that Angela sees. I don't know. It's unclear if they're seeing what James sees at all. But it's a personal hell for each of them. And Eddie eventually kind of embraces the violence that he's allowed to do in this world and is driven mad by it, and you have to fight him. And you kill Eddie. And James takes it real hard. He's like, I killed a human. I did. Oh, no.
Yeah, James has a tough go of it in this one scene, which the fact that he's acting like this is his first time, doesn't jive with some things we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another thing that I forgot to mention in the hospital is Laura, at one point James says, Laura, what are you doing here? It's not it's not safe here. You should get out of here. And she's like, what do you mean? Why is it not safe? Everything's fine. And that seems to me to imply that for Laura, there are no monsters. She's just seeing a normal town for the most part. So she seems to be able to interact with James, interact with these other characters, but all of the things that are tormenting them do not seem to impact her. And Laura does not show up in the prison or the Historical Society either. It's just the people that are being kind of tortured by Silent Hill.
That makes more sense for why she'd be there then. She's not really in Silent Hill proper. I guess the question would still just be okay, why'd she arrive there in the first place?
Yeah, and we can go into that. That's kind of the last section, which I think ties it all together. But before we kind of leave this section, which it goes from the Historical Society to a prison to a labyrinth, which makes no geometric sense, where you find Maria again. And she's like, hey, James, I'm behind these bars, but there's a bed here, and we could do something if you were to find me. Just stick your hands through the bars, James.
Also, her posture is very what I would refer to as basic instinct-y.
Yes. Very come hither. And you eventually find your way to her room by wandering through the weird labyrinth. After you've arrived and found her, she's dead. She is in the bed, that was behind her. She's got blood around her eyes and her nose. She's not moving. And James is like, "Oh, not again. Why do all the women I love die?"
He's like, fool me once, shame on me.
Yeah.
Is this now the second or third time we've seen Maria die?
This is the second time we've seen her die.
Yeah, Pyramid Head killed her once by the elevator, and now you find her dead in the bed.
Spoilers, there will be another.
Yeah. So James keeps seeing a woman that looks like his wife die. The first time was being stabbed by the phallic monster that he's created. The second time, she just mysteriously has a lot of capillaries busted in her face. Sure, certainly nothing going on there. James doesn't introspect about it because he doesn't introspect about anything. And you move on from here. You escape from the prison, and now you kind of are sent towards... Somehow the prison lets out at Toluca Lake, so you can get in a rowboat and head over to the Lakeview Motel, which is where James and his wife stayed the one time they visited Silent Hill. How did you enjoy the boat section, Pete?
The boat ride was like the Stairwell Part 2. Like, you're just rowing across this very foggy lake. You just have to create or like keep the lighthouse, whatever, street lamp in the center frame, and you just row interminably until you arrive.
How long did you spend rowing?
I think I passed out and then like woke up again. And it's like, oh, I'm at the island. Like, this is great. I felt like I was punished.
Hello.
Yes, you were being punished. We are joined mid-podcast.
You are being punished because I'm here.
We are joined by Braden, ArbitraryWater, Redacted, co-host of the Off the Deep End podcast, who was supposed to be on this whole show, but I forgot because we recorded at a weirder time than normal. Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, hello. I started playing this game so I could talk about it with you.
And now you are.
And now
Welcome.
I am.
We're in the rowboat.
We're in the
We're in
rowboat.
the rowboat.
Did you have anything you wanted to cover before the rowboat?
How do you feel about how every single part of that game is just about how James Sunderland is a creep and has questionable relationships with women?
Yep.
We have
Absolutely.
delved into that deeply.
Excellent.
About how every enemy is weirdly horny. The nurses are weirdly busty. The mannequins are just crotches with no hands. It's all bad.
Okay.
Phallic symbols everywhere.
Have you talked about the importance of tank controls and their moral value upon the entire genre?
No. We said
They
how
are
we
a
all turned it off
detriment.
immediately. Because it's bad.
Because I see you admit to your weakness.
Yes.
We do. My enjoyment is worth more than the purity of the tank controls.
I'm disappointed.
James Sunderland is a man, not a tank.
Are you sure? Or is he a miserable pile of secrets?
Well, yes. All men are.
That's true.
We're all Pyramid Head at heart.
I do like that even if you turn off the tank controls, once you get into the rowboat, you're in tank control land. But it makes sense with a rowboat. They drag you back in.
You are.
All roads lead to tank controls.
Yeah, I was just asking how long that the rowboat section went on, because this game has 3 distinct like time sink areas. The stairs that Pete said went on forever. Also the elevator in the same section.
Oh God, what is up with that announcement too?
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that one, but I was thinking about the one when you were going into the prison. But there is a very strange announcement in a elevator.
In the hospital. The hospital gives you a game show.
Yeah. And
I did the game show.
Did you?
You can do that. Like there's a box. I got it right.
Did you get something? What'd you get?
I did. It was full of bullets and ampules and health stuff. If you get it wrong, I think it fucks you up real bad.
Yeah.
You also, for one of the elevator scenes, to get on the elevator, you have to empty your pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Because...
We'll get into that one.
Oh, we haven't even gotten there yet? Oh,
yeah, that's in the hotel.
That's
I apologize. We'll get
one
there.
of the best parts of the game. So you get to the hotel once you get to the hotel, you get a music box pretty early on. The central puzzle of this section is going to be the music boxes. And I guess we haven't talked too much about the puzzles. Braden, how did you like the puzzles? Like, there's a few different find objects, use objects puzzles.
I feel like I'm probably the closest thing to the survival horror guy in this group of people. Am I correct on that? Or
it would probably be you or me.
Yeah.
Not Pete Resident Evil Busby or Gino. I love inventory management Grieco.
I do love inventory management, but not in this context.
I played some
ammo
Resident
conservation.
Evils. I played
Paladino.
Resident Evil 4 in my time.
Okay, so I think as a puzzle adventure game, I think Silent Hill has never been quite as good as some of the Resident Evil games. But that's because they're trying to be more like naturalistic with the environment design, where it's like, this is a real hotel. It is designed like a hotel instead of a hilarious puzzle box mansion filled with places to put cranks.
Yeah, and I mean the puzzles in this game tend to be find 3 weird objects. There are 4 places to put them. Figure out how to put them there.
And then it's like word riddles, word puzzles. Yes. And those are, I believe, the ones that change depending on which riddle difficulty you select.
Yeah, they do. Maps have also never been so important in my life as in this game. If you don't find a map, you're pretty much screwed for the whole level.
You will be so confused.
Yeah, and the game does a really good job of dynamically updating it as you try doors and they don't open.
Yes.
Yeah. James scribbles on the map in various color pens. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I feel remiss if we didn't shout out the like SAT level word problem of the hanged the noose puzzle in the prison.
Yes.
Did you enjoy that puzzle?
I didn't enjoy any of the puzzles.
You didn't enjoy figuring out which of the 6 hunged corpses was innocent?
No. I liked the clock puzzle the best, I guess.
I liked that the characters' names, the like people in the riddle, their names started with H, M, and S, so you knew, even if you couldn't figure out the word puzzle. It's like H is hours, M is minutes, S is seconds.
Yeah. There were layers.
So the hotel, like we meet Laura again. She's playing tricks on you. She's like, "Hey James, you need to get this video that you and your wife recorded."
Wait, I'm sorry. You just said the hours, minutes, seconds thing. I was like, that's how you get through the fucking clock.
Oh, Phoenix Down.
I just spun it until it clicked.
Yeah, it's hours, minutes, seconds. Speaking of the videotape, I mean, the whole game's pretty horny. Was I the only one who assumed it was a sex tape?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was a pretty good bet.
Yeah.
Yep.
But once you get to, I don't know if it's at this point that, so did any of you look at the letter in James's inventory? The one that called him to Silent Hill?
Yes.
If you look at it, I forget if it's after you leave the prison or after you watch the video, but I think it's before you watch the video. Yeah, I think at that point.
I think it's as soon as you get to the hotel, it shows up blank.
It's blank. So the letter that you can look at that says, "Hey, honey, come to Silent Hill," it blanks out in your inventory after that point, making it clear that there never was a letter. And when Laura asks you about the letter, he's like, "What letter? What are you even talking about?" So James starts even forgetting how he ended up in Silent Hill, like his weird justification of why Mary's there. Braden, how does how's the video go? The nice videotape.
Oh dear. Is this the one where I'm trying to remember?
This is the videotape.
Okay.
The only one.
Yeah.
All the things come together.
Yes. This is the thing that reveals James murdered his wife, right?
Yes. So it starts out as a fairly normal video of like Mary talking to camera, telling James about how much she loves him, which also is a weird thing for like their video that they had recorded years earlier, but that's neither here nor there. And then it cuts to a camera in like the upper corner of this hospital room where James, like Mary's complaining or something because she's sick and she's in pain, and James just like walks over and clearly smothers her with a pillow.
Yep.
And after this point, he realizes what he's done. And the next time he sees Laura, he tells her what he's done, that he killed Mary. And Laura, I think it's either at this point right before the video or right after, she says that there's a letter that Mary wrote to Laura that said, like, hey, I would have adopted you. Happy 8th birthday. Like, we were buddies in the hotel. So I guess Laura and Mary were both staying in the Lakeview Hotel recently. They were just Mary was, meeting with doctors and kind of recovering in this hotel, and Laura was there too, and they became buddies. And the letter says, happy 8th birthday, Laura. And James asks Laura, like, how old are you right now? And she says she's 8. And so this letter was written by Mary before she died, and if she had died 3 years ago, Laura would be 11, but she's not. She's still 8. So it becomes clear that James is not – she didn't die 3 years ago. Like, she maybe died yesterday. Like, he killed her very recently. And so that's also why Laura's like, oh, Mary might be in Silent Hill, because she saw her recently. She was alive.
So that's the read. James is mistaken about the timeline that's happening here.
Yes, he has deluded himself.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a theory. You want to hear my theory?
I
Is
would
it time
love
for
to.
theory time?
Absolutely.
I love theories, especially about games that have had 19 years worth of theory crafting.
I think this one is like pretty solid. I think I am not the first to come up with this.
We've got evidence.
Yeah, if we go into the very first scene in the game, in that gross bathroom overlooking the lake, James does this weird motion with his hand in the mirror, where he like pulls his hand down his face. It's very much like an actor getting into composure. I think he killed Mary. He goes to the bathroom, and then immediately he's like, all right, time to act. 3 years ago, I killed my wife, and now I got this letter that probably doesn't exist. And then he goes into Silent Hill, and we know from certain endings that Mary's body is inside of his car. So it all...
We do? Oh, no.
Spoilers. We do. Yes. In the water ending, which we'll address once we get to the endings, we know that Mary's body is in his car.
Okay. So my read was Mary like was relocated to this hotel, like to basically as hospice. James goes to the hotel, he kills her. He puts her body in the car, and then as he is trying to leave Silent Hill, the town basically calls him back.
The dark psychic emanations of a town reflecting one's own internal guilt and turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Basically, he gets to the outskirts of town, and then, oh, there's this letter. Oh, Mary's in the town, and he forgets what he has done. And is called back into the town as though he didn't do anything. But her body is definitely still in that car, and he is... he basically has to remember what he had done only probably hours or days before.
Yeah, that's also a good read.
I mean, this is neither here nor there, but how did he get her body out of the hotel and into the car? Just plot magic?
Probably plot magic.
Plot magic.
Okay. All right.
James is way more composed before he goes to Silent Hill.
He's like, he just dropped like 80 IQ points in that rest stop bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be bothered to read books anymore.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit around and just eat pizza?
Like,
Yeah, James is just a nothing man.
Just a goober, just a garbage human being.
Yep. We also know that Mary had been writing him letters, and he just was not coming to Silent Hill. And then when he finally does, he shows up and he kills her because she's annoying, I guess.
Yeah, my fan theory is that James being sent the letters by Mary it was really taunting him because he's clearly illiterate.
Yes. He doesn't have time to read.
These letters have nothing to do with me.
Every time he keeps picking up the books, he's like, it's not that I can't read this book, it's that I don't want to. So yeah, I think that's a good read. Like, he's been getting these letters, he eventually comes, and the one time he can be fucked to come see his dying wife, he kills her because it's more convenient for him. So once you have that realization, the hospital goes dark. You kind of have to escape. There is that cool section that Pete brought up where you have to put all of your items away so you can ride an elevator, and the game gives you some good scares because they put monsters between you and where you need to go, and you're actually unarmed, which is it's the only time they do that over the course of the whole game. You eventually kind of stumble upon a dark room in the hospital where you fight two pyramid heads.
And Maria gets killed again.
They kill Maria
yeah.
again. Yep.
They kill Maria again. And then you fight two pyramid heads. And James at this point is like over it. Like, he's realized that this is the town punishing him, and he stops caring about Maria dying at this point. He's like, let's just end this. You don't kill the pyramid heads. You just damage them enough that they kill themselves. They Evangelion themselves.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't even say they died necessarily. You just go up to them and you like interact with them, and it says pyramid head won't move anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's after you
gotta get
take
some medication for
them.
that.
You take some eggs from them, and then James goes, they won't move anymore. They're just corpses now. I've gotten what I need. Which is gross.
Yeah, they're too busy waiting to show up in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah. Which is also very in character for James, going back to the corpse thing. As soon as things are dead, James does not give one fuck about them.
And this is where you get that big knife. Right?
No, you get that earlier.
You get that earlier. You get that in the labyrinth.
Right. Yeah, the great knife.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great knife. Did anyone use the great knife?
She's kind of slow.
It's very heavy, but it kills things in one hit.
I hit Eddie with the great knife, and he didn't like it. It's 2 shots with the great knife on normal combat, and Eddie goes down.
Damn. Nice.
Yeah, so after this, now, like, the mask is fully off once the pyramid heads are dead. You can find an audio recording of a doctor explaining to James that he doesn't know how long Mary has to live, but she's very sick, and James is clearly distraught about it. You get into a hallway where you can hear Mary kind of talking to James, and it's probably the sound of, like, their last conversation right before James kills her. And then you open up a room, and Maria is there again, but now she looks like Mary. And I think this changes depending on which ending you get.
Yeah, it does.
But for me, it was Maria dressed up as Mary saying, James, I'm everything you want. Let your wife go. Just let's be together. And James is like, no, you're not my Mary. This is wrong. And then she transforms into a demon, and you have to fight her.
Yeah, demon who's strapped down to a bed. Again, both hospital and weirdly sexual. Just fitting Silent Hill.
Yep, and because she has a butterfly tattoo on her hip, she shoots moths at you. which is weird.
Yeah. And they don't hurt. They just kind of bother you until she gets up to you and then stabs you with a, like, alien tail thing she's got going on.
It's not great.
Yeah.
Did any of you enjoy the combat in this section?
No.
What combat?
I ran away and then shot her with a hunting rifle, and then she shot moths at me, and then I shot her with the hunting rifle again. It's not a good fight. None of the boss fights in Silent Hill games
None of
are
the
good.
boss fights are great.
No.
I think that we should remake the Silent Hills with Dark Souls combat.
Sure. That would make sense.
That
Why
level
not?
of technical. I want to dodge roll underneath Pyramid Head's knife.
I mean, given how terrible James's running ability is, I mean, we're already halfway there. Because as we all know, here's the rhyme. If a dodge roll and stamina bar be, your game is Dark Souls, probably.
You're not wrong.
Got 'em.
James, so canonically, do we think James is a pack-a-day smoker, 2 packs? Because he can't move for more than 2 seconds without needing a break.
No.
I bet he just has a desk job and just, like, has never exercised in his life.
James is a dev, is what you're saying?
Yes.
How often do you run? Like, normally, I guess.
Me?
Yeah, like, I don't run that often. I don't think I could.
Sometimes.
I play basketball 3 to 4 times a week, so
Okay,
at
well,
least that.
I punch people. There's
Yeah.
a lot of cardio in that.
There's more cardio when the people don't want to be punched.
I guess I'm like, you know what? I can't blame James too much because if I was not doing such strenuous activity, I might also be winded after 30 seconds of running.
Yeah, thankfully James is lightly jogging and the monsters are shambling, so he's still got them beat.
Yeah, and you don't walk up to shelves in your home and just rip things off. And just like, it has nothing to do with me. And
This
screw
is-
them about the room.
This isn't relevant right now.
I can't believe there's no article about me in Silent Hill Monthly.
A dead
Just-
body can't be bothered.
Just picking up 3 random items and just trying to slam them together into something.
Wax
now-
doll, lighter, horseshoe.
And now they kiss. Mwah. I love this interpretation of James. It's got way more charm than he does.
Ooh, got him.
He's the worst.
Owned.
Do we talk about all the endings now?
Yeah, so Pete, you and I both got the leave ending.
Yes.
Braden, did you get to
I
the
got
ending?
I didn't get to the end. I haven't finished it yet.
Okay, so you don't know your dark fate.
I don't know. All I know is that I'm not getting the dog or the UFO ending, so who even cares?
Those are the
Sure.
good ones. You can only get those in New Game Plus, because who wouldn't want us to play this game twice?
Yeah, so there are, I believe, 6 endings in total.
Yes.
Yeah.
3 that you can get on your first playthrough, another 3 that get unlocked on your second playthrough. The 3 endings that you can get in the original are Leave, Maria, and Water. So the Leave ending occurs if you do not leave yourself in high damage. You move very quickly through the game, kind of staying main path as much as you possibly can. It's also more likely that you'll get it if you spend less time with Maria, if you don't listen to the kind of guilty tapes or listen to long Mary dialogue telling James how he murdered her. Like, if you run through those sections, there's less of a chance that you'll get a different ending. So for Leave, you get the final letter that Mary wrote, like the actual final letter, not the one that called James to Silent Hill. It starts with, I believe, the same stuff that drew James to Silent Hill, but it gives you the context that she was actually there. It's not like the spooky haunted letter. And then you see James being led out of the cemetery at the outskirts of town by Laura. So they leave together. There is the Maria ending, where James is like, yo, I'm ditching the Zero, this Mary woman. I'm getting with Maria. and you basically leave with Maria out of Silent Hill, but she starts coughing as you leave, and it becomes clear that she probably is sick with whatever Mary had. So, James doesn't get to have a fun life with his weird satanic girlfriend.
No, he's gonna have to smother her too.
His wife, but sexy. He's got to murder her too.
Yep. And then there's the water ending where James basically comes to terms with the fact that he killed his wife and realizes he can't live without her, and so he drives his car, I guess with her body in it,
Yep.
into Toluca Lake and commits suicide.
Mm-hmm. That is the one that I watched. In order to get that, you have to act in a, quote, suicidal manner. So you want to explain, Em? Oh, yeah. One of the things that determines which ending you get is if you have your health low for a significant portion of the game. And there are other things such as if you look at Angela's knife in your inventory, if you listen to all the conversations that basically tell you, like, hey, you killed Mary.
Hey, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. There's the like that last corridor leading up to the final boss fight. There's a long conversation that you can listen to. And if you don't like hustle down that hallway, it'll put you on the path to the bad ending. Yeah, there are a bunch of deciding factors.
Yeah, and like if you spend more time with Maria, if you, heaven forbid, go back to check on Maria when she's in the hospital and like is in a room by herself, like any of that sort of stuff, like you have to spend a lot of time just kind of chilling on the map, spending time with Maria to get the Maria ending. And then there are 3 endings that you can get on multiple playthroughs. One of them is Rebirth. There are some canonical items in the Silent Hill cult lore that allow you to bring people back from the dead. You can get those items in the second playthrough, and you can basically row Mary's corpse out to the lake to perform a ritual to bring her back to life. Does it
work out?
Gods.
Like, is she better, or is she zombie?
They don't show it.
Oh, okay.
It's just James rowing out saying, like, the old gods are still alive in this town.
It'll probably work.
It'll be fine.
I'm sure she won't remember how you killed her. Then there's the dog ending and the UFO ending, which are 2 joke endings. One of them, a dog was behind everything that happened in Silent Hill the whole time.
The greatest ending in all of video games is you have to do a bunch of very specific things. Like, I believe you have to find like a couple hidden switches. And then at the end of the game, instead of the last boss fight, James just goes into a room, and it's a what is it, a Shiba Inu or a Pomeranian? Yeah, it's a Shiba Inu just pulling levers in front of a series of monitors. And then James says in Japanese, "It was you." And then it has the best end credit song of all time.
It's very good. And then there's the UFO ending, which is the other alternate explanation that it was aliens the whole time. And I think they beam him up into a spaceship and fly away.
Good. Get James out of my life.
And I think Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1 is there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. He's like just chilling. He's like, hey, you too?
Yeah.
You're like, yep. He's like, weird, right? And also, none of these are canonical. They don't confirm anyone as being the true ending to the game.
The dog ending is just as canonical as the suicide ending is just as canonical as the resurrection ending. So I think, kind of to sum up Silent Hill 2, like, this is the game that most directly, I think, evokes Silent Hill as a place that draws people to it, specifically people who have done terrible things, in order to kind of punish them for their wrongs. It comes up with kind of a Silent Hill as moody location to unpack people who have done bad stuff and explore their psyche and explore kind of how they're dealing with the turmoil of what they have done. The other games in this series very much care about the cult of Silent Hill. They care about the specific lore that they've dreamed up for Silent Hill and
I think
people that live
it's
there.
definitely, it varies, but this is the one game in the series that is the hardest on the town as a like dark metaphor instead of town as place where spooky thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they don't go into like, other than there were murders in this town, they're not talking about, well, the priest of this church. I found a wax figurine and some books on occult stuff in one of the rooms in the prison, and James, because James is an idiot, is like, well, I don't want to read about this stuff. I imagine if it was a different protagonist, they might have, read it and been like, the cult of Silent Hill.
I actually love that for this one, because James could not be bothered if there was cult activity going on in Silent Hill, and he's just going about his own business.
Like they're just blood sacrifices just off screen the entire time, and James just doesn't bring it up. He's like, that's got nothing to do with me.
While you're in the prison, there's like drawings on the wall that are like occult symbols, and there are all these books that you can find that are like how to summon demons 101. And he's like, oh, better leave those alone.
Entirely nonplussed whenever the air raid siren happens and it goes into spooky town.
Yeah, I think that it's a shame that this is the game that learned that lesson. It's the second game and they really haven't done this vibe. I guess Shattered Memories does this a little bit, and Origins does this a little bit too. But Origins is kind of like a facsimile of Silent Hill 2. It's like a Silent Hill 2 best hits album as done by a American developer instead of a Japanese developer. But I just wish that Konami gave a shit about this franchise at all.
Too late.
Yeah, they clearly don't, and
the most horribly beleaguered fan base in all of video games.
No respect.
The real punishment of Silent Hill is
being a Silent
Konami's
Hill
treatment of Silent Hill.
The fact that I have more confidence in getting a new Silent Hill pachinko machine before we get another Silent Hill game, I think says everything you need to know about what this franchise is going to get. But I think that this game is at its most interesting, and this series is at its most interesting when they are introspections on their character studies. They are using this location as a way to augment. It's a familiar location, but it's a funhouse mirror depending on who is kind of being tormented by the town. I think that that's a very cool setup that they could have just done like almost a serialized sort of, series of games here. They could have gone, James got trapped here, and so it's Horny Town. Maybe this murderer who, this arsonist was there, and it's on fire all the time. Eddie's world would be interesting. It's all the monsters are people who are making fun of you and laughing all the time.
There's a little bit of that in 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is still stuff like that in 3. And apparently Team Silent was very much like torn on whether to do the internal psychological hell or the literal eldritch hell.
Uh-huh.
And so there are parts of Silent Hill 3 that split the difference, but people still like that one.
Yeah, 3's the last good one.
When are we going to play Downpour?
We're not.
Maybe you're not.
That's Silent Hill 2. What do we think? This is your first entry into the series. Pete, I think we agreed this is better than 4.
Yeah, I'd give you that much.
Yeah. It is short enough that I did not mind it. It's a shame that I had so much technical problems that I couldn't play it myself, but also I got the gist of it. It just made me want to watch the movie again because I think the first movie did a pretty good job of disseminating the important aspects of
the vibes.
Yeah, it's all vibes. I'm very much about vibes these days. So let's watch the movie.
Yeah. I think, as a seminal piece of horror video game making, I think this game, you could see how it inspired so many other games. You can definitely see a lot of the earmarks that other games have picked up on from the tone, from the use of the perspective. They managed to take a drawback of draw distance, when they wanted high fidelity, and they turned it into a plus in creating kind of this atmospheric feeling from the fog. They could have done Superman 64, right? That had the same limitation, but that was garbage. They took the exact same limitation and turned it into a masterpiece.
And then when the HD collection got rid of that limitation, it became less good.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about that at all?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comic Sans.
They did use Comic Sans as a font.
The Comic Sans font on the Silent Hill Ranch sign. The first thing you see, it's fine.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for Silent Hill 2, which means now, Em, it is your turn to pick once again.
It's my turn to pick.
Oh, wait. No, wait. It's Pete's turn.
No, Pete picked.
No, you picked Get in the Car Loser.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
right.
I did.
Yeah. I did Artful Escape before that. Nice. It is my turn to pick. And I am prepared for it, oddly enough. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's been far too long since we've played a turn-based strategy game.
Oh, finally.
I know.
Oh, finally.
We've been clamoring for it. And I have one that is on sale, 50% off for the next 38 hours as of recording time. So
all right, I am booting up my Steam
Yep,
account.
Leap on it. We are going to play Into the Breach. It's a game I've been interested in checking out for a long time now.
Oh, have none of you played that?
I have not yet.
I have not. What are you? Into the
Breach. Control powerful mechs from the future to defeat an alien threat.
Ooh, from the makers of FTL.
Mm-hmm.
I love those. That's a sentence I love.
And like I said, 50% off for the next 38 hours.
It's a video game I deeply respect and acknowledge as being good, but it also directly goes against everything I like about strategy games, which is chaos and meaningless complexity.
All right, it has been purchased. It is downloading. All right, so next up we are playing Into the Breach from the makers of FTL. Cool. I think we did. FTL was one of our first podcasts, wasn't it? I think we did FTL, right?
I can't remember. Might have been so long ago at this point that it's just impossible to tell.
I'm going back. I think we might have done FTL at one point because we needed a game that I had played already because we didn't have time. Maybe we didn't. I'm not seeing it. Maybe we did not, but I played a hell of a lot of FTL. So
no, yeah, I don't think we ever played that one, but maybe we'll circle back.
All right. Well, thank you, Pete.
Yeah, it was nice to get something suitable for spooky season.
Thank you, Em.
Thank you. Into the Breach has been bought and immediately finished downloading. So that's good.
Same.
And thanks for letting me play a Silent Hill game, because I haven't, and it seems like something you should play at least once.
Yep. And thank you, Braden, for hopping in the back half of this.
Thank you. Instead of streaming Silent Hill 2 the other night, I streamed Siren Blood Curse for the PS3, which is not as good as Silent Hill 2.
Sorry to hear that. Can't believe Siren Blood Curse, this second Shrift horror franchise, was not very good. Oh, well. Well, at this point, Silent Hill is the second Shrift horror franchise. Give me, I guess, the next game from the Detention Devotion people before you give me another Silent Hill, honestly. It does most of the Silent Hill stuff better. All right. Well, thank you, everyone who's been listening. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Till next time, peace.